have never been a person that has to upgrade gear and equipment all of the time. My goodness. So over the Christmas break, I was gifted something new, something amazing. And I'm going to tell you what that is. It's for the podcast, it's for creation, and I'm using it right now.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and yeah, this is Podtastic Audio. You know, this show, I designed it and created it because I love podcasting. I love helping podcasters and anybody that comes to me for advice, asking me like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Well, I'm going to try to make sure I can help you the best way I can. And since I actually love podcasting, why not just make another podcast about podcasting? And I know there's probably a bunch of podcasts out there about podcasting. Trust me, I listen to most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they're all fantastic. They're all great. We all are here designing a show to help you make a better show for your podcast. The more podcasts out there, the merrier. And when this show launched, it was in the middle of COVID days. If you remember back to 2020, when everybody and their mother had a podcast of some kind. And I think because a lot of people are probably bored, sitting at home, doing nothing, watching Tiger King and whatever else they were doing, they actually decided to make a podcast. I did podcasting just prior to that whole 2020 lockdown shutdown back in 2019. But I can tell you this much, is that I never stopped working during the entire time of COVID. While you were sitting home watching Tiger King, I was actually putting in 12 hours a day, working around the clock all night long. And then after I did my normal job, I actually got a chance to crack the mic and do some podcasting, do interviews, do a lot of amazing things. And that's where I kind of got the bug of doing podcasting, because I actually love doing podcasting. It sounds crazy, I know, because a lot of the other shows about podcasting, they're all fantastic. But one thing most of them do is they will try to get you to buy something they have for sale, whether it's a coaching thing or whether it's some kind of like webinar thing or it's some kind of thing they're selling you, which is funny because Podtastic Audio was never designed to sell you anything at all. This show here was only designed to help you. And I actually really do love podcasting, and I love creating podcasting. You know, that's probably what it is that I actually really enjoy the creation process of making a podcast, recording audio, throwing it into an editor, making something out of nothing, and then being able to enjoy it later, whether it's at work or on a drive or wherever. This audio piece of content that I've created that I'm like, wow, that is amazing. I actually enjoy listening to what I've made. And that's what it's all about, actually making a show or making an episode for your show that you would be proud of. And that's something that you physically are going to listen to later because you want to make a show that you would want to listen to. Now, I know I have not been podcasting for very long in the grand scheme of things. I physically recorded my very first episode of a podcast back in the summer of 2019. And might I remind you, I've been working a full-time job during the entire time from then till now. And I've made a lot of podcast episodes for me, for clients, and for others. And I'm going to tell you at the very end of this episode how many different podcast episodes I've physically created. So stick around until then. But since it is now January 2025, it feels like a brand new year because it is a brand new year. And January is like the start of a brand new year. Although we are in January right now, it kind of feels a little bit like December 2.0. Like it's cold some places. Some people have their Christmas stuff still up. I think in this office here, I'm looking over, I still see a miniature Christmas tree. There's kind of Christmas still vibes around here, but we're working on taking them down. I get it. I know some people January 1st, it's like, scratch out Christmas. We are going full into a whole new year. It's January. I don't want to see nothing that's Christmas. I don't want to see anything that's holiday related. Get rid of all of it. But hey, we're working on it. But being that it is January right now, I figure, why don't I go back to the very beginning when I first started the podcast, what kind of equipment we had then and what kind of equipment I have today? Because over the holidays, I upgraded a major piece of equipment for the podcast, which is going to help me make some amazing content. And it's quite an amazing tool. In fact, I'm using it right now. Can you tell the difference? Probably not. But anyways, back at the very beginning, when I had a computer for my condo, I had a computer back then. It was a Dell computer I purchased off the Dell website. Remember that guy that used to do the, "Hey, dude, you're getting a Dell" commercials? Well, back then, so long ago, probably in the mid-2000s, maybe 2003, I think it was, I bought my very first actual home computer. I was living on my own, and I bought my very first computer because I wanted to, see what this thing can do. I was more interested in music, like actually getting music and making MP3 files and doing the whole iPod thing. Actually, I didn't have an iPod. That was too expensive for me. I actually had one of the knockoff ones. Windows version ones, things like that. So I had one of those things. I was so excited to be able to burn music and put music in my car and listen to it on CDs and things like that. Hey, what's a CD, kids? Go look it up. It's way before, MP3s came out, way before iPods and way before, downloading music and things like that. So I was super excited to be able to create things with my computer. And we're talking about Windows XP, probably when Windows XP first came out. When was that? Early 2000s. So sometime around then, that was the computer I was using. That was the software I was using. I was basically using it for whatever it can possibly do. I might have upgraded the RAM if I remember back then, but we're talking small RAM amounts. We're talking maybe less than a gig for a computer to have RAM with, less than a gig on there, maybe upgrading it to 1.5 gigs, maybe 2 if you're lucky, way back in the day. So it couldn't do a ton of things. So when I first started playing with video work on that computer, I was using the classic Windows Movie Maker on that computer, and it was very choppy. It was very basic. We're talking what's the resolution below 720? Is it 480? Maybe below that. There's resolutions below 480. Well, anyways, those were the kind of videos I was creating with Windows Movie Maker. And I discovered a cool new website called YouTube. Now we're talking mid-2000s, probably 2005, 2006, sometime around there. And the videos on YouTube were very basic. There wasn't much to them. They weren't anything like they are today. And so I created a YouTube channel with I think I had a Gmail account. Maybe I did. Anyways, I got a YouTube channel going. I uploaded a few things on there. I started uploading videos on there because I knew it was an easy way to share my content with family members and friends and people like that very easily. That's why I loved YouTube back then. And although the camera was incredibly low resolution, and although the computer was very laggy at times and it couldn't do anything beyond maybe 480 resolution, maybe it was a lot lower than that, it was so much fun just creating stuff. Using the old classic Windows Movie Maker, just stitching video clips together, maybe putting different transitions. And then I figured out how to add music behind the video, music clips, MP3 files, whatever I could find. I would put it in there and really tinker with this thing and play around with just this whole creation thing that was so much fun. And I never had any idea thinking that YouTube would be this thing where I'm going to try to monetize this thing. I'm going to try to grow it. I'm going to try to get an audience, a social media thing, all those things I didn't even think about. I think actually back then, YouTube and I believe it was MySpace were kind of the two places. In fact, I think MySpace had its own like video channel page, which looked very similar to YouTube back then. The kind of videos that YouTube had were very similar to the videos that MySpace had. Now, this is all before like Facebook came out and became a big thing. But that's all we had back then. And MySpace was like, it was like the very first social media platform that lets you interact with other people, post whatever you want. You could add music and graphics and all kinds of things to your page. Really kind of like pimp out your MySpace page and make it bedazzled with glitter and music and all kinds of things. People got crazy with their MySpace pages. It was quite amazing. You had like your top 8 friends that were plastered right on top of your homepage of your website there. Now, the only downside to MySpace back then was that it was all basically on your computer. There might have been a web browser mobile version of MySpace back then, but I didn't have a smartphone. I had a flip phone back in those days. That's all we had. All the pictures I took on my phone, they were like super low resolution with my Motorola Razr flip phone, the original Razr flip phone back in the day. So let's fast forward a bit all the way to the year 2013. And I remember that year particularly because that was the year I got the computer that started it all for my podcasting and YouTube journey. When I really kicked it into high gear was with that old computer. In fact, that computer I still have today. I don't use it. It's sitting right here in this little cabinet. I got to figure out what to do with it, but I still have it right now. That was 2013. I walked into an Office Depot during a Black Friday sale. I did not get up there in the early morning to get there. It was like middle of the day. But, sometimes they got sales that go on all day or whatever. But I thought it was a killer computer for the price. It was an HP computer with, I think, 12 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot for back then. Plus, it had like a 2 terabyte hard drive, which also is a lot for back then. And I'm not sure what kind of processor it had, but it was powerful enough to render video, nothing quite 4K, but HD video. It can render that kind of stuff. It can make videos and it can do podcasting, which I had not known it can do podcasting until much, much later. So in 2013, I got my first GoPro. I started making GoPro videos at 1080p, recording those and having so much fun with the whole content creation process. I'm talking making video, editing video, sprinkling in music to your videos, uploading them to YouTube so I can share them with friends and family, not even thinking that this could be this whole juggernaut of a YouTube channel, not even thinking that by me creating these YouTube videos that I could like distribute them out to everybody in the world and I could monetize this like YouTube channel. That was not my intentions of making my YouTube channel back then. My entire approach to making YouTube videos was probably the same way that the average person thinks about social media, or at least posting on social media. I just looked at YouTube as just another social media platform, which actually that's what it is. It's a social media platform. I know some people don't see it that way, but at the heart of it all, it really is. It's a social media platform where you can post stuff, people can comment on stuff, you can share stuff, and so on and so forth. So I looked at it as a place that I would upload videos to and share them with friends and family. And it was a great place to create content in that way with that old computer. Now, fast forward to 2019, when I created the very first podcast, the Chris and Christine Show, on that same computer. So I assumed that since I was able to take video content from cameras and things like that and make them look, okay, and mash video together and figure out how to edit video in a timeline and things like that, just basic video editing stuff with that computer, then I should be able to make a podcast with this old thing. it should be super easy to do. So the hard thing for me was to figure out how to get audio to go into the computer and record it in real time. That was a tricky part because I had never done that before. All my recordings have always been on a camera, then insert memory card into the computer, and then upload those files to the computer and then work on them in Windows Movie Maker, which was an old program. It does not exist anymore, but that's what I had on that computer to use, and that's what I used. It was kind of clunky, but it got the job done. But in order to create an audio podcast, there were a few things I had to figure out first. First things first was, how can I physically record from a microphone through maybe a USB port on the computer into the computer? Where do I record it at? Like, what kind of software do I use to actually record the podcast? And I just Googled like free recording software or best recording software for podcasts. And at the top of the list for free was this thing called Audacity. And well, for free and a free download, why not? So I download Audacity and I have this cheap little headset and I'm playing with it. I can record audio through the headset and it actually lays down the audio in Audacity, which is funny that I'm actually still using Audacity today. I'm using it right now. But anyways, I record that and I try to figure out, how do I get two microphones to plug into this computer so we can do a co-hosted podcast, because I did not want to do a solo podcast all by myself like I'm doing right now. Because most people, when they start a podcast, they either go the co-hosted route or they go the interview-only route. Very rarely does anybody go the solo-only, like just by themselves podcast. Very rarely does that happen unless that person is already a trained speaker or a broadcaster, or they are already used to speaking, on stages by themselves and things like that. But if they're not, like I wasn't like that, I was never used to that kind of stuff. So I figured co-hosted it is. But how do I make two microphones work on this computer? Now, I didn't want to spend, thousands of dollars on a gear, or I didn't want to buy extra stuff if creating a podcast was something that I did not like doing, or if Christine didn't like doing. Why would I invest in all kinds of money and gear on stuff if neither one of us enjoy doing this? So I look for free software, easy places to host that were super cheap, cheap microphones. Basically, I think all in for podcasting in the early days was maybe $100. That's including cables and headphones. I mean, $100 total for both of us with my old computer. So very minimal investment. And by the time we got to episode maybe 20 or so, I was enjoying creating podcasting just like I was enjoying creating those GoPro videos and uploading those to YouTube. Purely enjoyment. I enjoy doing it. Not even a thought of, can I make money from this thing? The whole money talk or thinking about making money was so not even a consideration. I enjoy podcasting because I enjoy making podcasting, just like I enjoyed making those YouTube videos because I enjoy the creation process, the recording process, the editing process, the making this thing that I can share with other people so they can enjoy the thing that I have made. It's like art class, It's like, I made this thing, check this thing out. It's my art. It's my vision. It's something spectacular that I enjoy doing. Let me share this thing with you. And that is what it was about. And that's what it's still about. And that is what it was when we created the podcast in the beginning. So around episode 20, the first upgrade, the first major upgrade for the podcast happened. And that was when I upgraded us to ATR 2100 microphones and a audio interface. The audio interface was by Behringer, or how do you say it? Is it Behringer? It's the one you're talking. You know what I'm talking about. It's Behringer 404. It had 4 audio inputs for 4 different microphones, a single headphone output, which we had to split so we can both hear it, and it plugged directly into the computer via USB. Very simple. It's not very much. I think I paid maybe less than $200 for it. I think with that and the 2 microphones, and cable, maybe I spent somewhere in the ballpark of maybe $250 or maybe $300 total, which was all I spent on the podcast really up until that point. And the major reason why I decided to do the upgrade in the first place was because I wanted our audio to sound good, yeah, but I also wanted to make sure that the recording process was as easy as I possibly could make it. Ease of use with actual really good output. So if you think of it like this, if it's incredibly easy to record a podcast and it actually sounds really good in the process, then it makes it more fun and more enjoyable. So think about the thing you do that you dread that is probably like, oh gosh, I got to do that one thing today. And it's so uncomfortable. It's awkward. I don't like doing it. It makes me feel bad doing it. Oh, it's a struggle to do that thing. Maybe it's going to the gym because right now we are in January. And January, everyone's struggling to go to the gym. And probably, maybe by now, if not maybe by February, the gyms will be back to their regular capacity, the regular scheduled program. All the newbies will probably be gone. But if you are a newbie in the gym right now, you know what it's like. Struggling to get up there and go to the gym. You're like, oh, do I have to do it today? Oh, it's so hard. It's so much work, man. So that being said, it was all about making our podcast streamlined, easy, efficient, making the creation easy and efficient, making it able to where we can now take on guests and record guest interviews and do things that we really couldn't do with the other setup, and making it sound amazing, or at least the best I possibly could make it. And the next hardware piece of equipment that I upgraded to after that piece, I don't know if you would really consider this for the podcast. Maybe you do, because I use this to create the podcast. And that is that old, 2013 computer I had was starting to really show its age. It was getting very, very hot. So hot that the fan would be kicking on and spinning so loud that I was so afraid that the audio of the fan would get into the microphones and actually you'd hear the noise on the microphones. So I would put the computer in this little cupboard that I had and then close the cupboard. And then I did that for a little while, but I thought the computer was going to catch on fire. It was that hot. So I said, well, that can't work. And it was so noisy anyways, I decided to get some foam and some cardboard. And I took this cardboard and attached this foam to it, made my own little wall panel to kind of cover in front of the computer to kind of dampen some of the noise it was making. It was so hot. Turns out what really happened is that the computer had a bunch of dust and dust type stuff that actually gathered around the CPU or GPU of the computer, I could tell. So I had to crack the thing apart and use one of the aerosol canister blowing things and blew all of the dust out with a vacuum and sucked it all up. That seemed to help for a little bit. But I did notice that sometimes I would record something and the audio kind of would crackle a little bit or get staticky after I recorded it. It would sound great, in my headphones. I would listen live through the interface as I recorded. But when it went down on the actual recording into Audacity and I played it back, it'd be kind of crackly or staticky. It would miss to certain sections, would just kind of skip out. You're like, what happened? And that's when it dawned on me. I think the computer was on its last legs. So that was when I had a decision to make. Do I upgrade this old computer and try to maybe, throw some new RAM memory cards into this thing to give it a little more juice, to handle a little bit more? Or do I toss that computer and go into something completely new? Well, I decided to go in the new direction of upgrading to a brand new MacBook Pro M1 computer and making the switch from Windows to Apple. They're both computers. Yeah, they both kind of do the same thing in different ways. But the Apple stuff seems so much more seamless, probably because I already have an iPhone. I've had iPhones since the iPhone 2 came out. I've had iPhones ever since then. No, I did not get every single edition of the iPhone. I probably waited maybe like every, 3 to 5 years before I'd upgrade into phones. But I love Apple stuff. It works great. And when I got the new MacBook Pro, everything seemed so amazing on it. Things seemed so much faster. Rendering audio files, recording audio files, doing video edits, recording video, editing video, things like that were so much faster. Things seemed seamless, especially using things like Audacity here. Finishing an MP3 file, finishing a WAV file, it made things so much easier. And that is what it's all about. It's like, I create this thing, I want to make it as easy as possible because I do not have time to be sitting here all day, all night, playing around, waiting for things to work. If they do work, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But when it comes to upgrading anything, for me, it's been about making sure that the thing you upgrade to is going to benefit me in the long run. How is this going to help me? I know some people like to upgrade because they just like the shiny new toy. I don't want to do that. I don't like doing that. I upgrade because the thing I upgrade to is going to benefit me. And that is the reason why I upgrade anything at all. And so when I upgraded the computer, it made a major benefit in my life in so many different ways, more than just recording podcasts. I could do video stuff and I can transfer stuff and I can do texting right on the computer, which is quite an amazing feature of a Mac computer. If you have a Mac computer, yeah, you can do your text messaging right on your computer. You can share files that way. Makes things incredibly easy if you're in the Mac, like the Mac world. And I know a lot of people, they love their Samsungs, they love their Androids, they love their Windows stuff. Hey, that's great. You do you. But I'm telling you, for making things work seamlessly and making things incredibly easy to navigate, and they sound great and they look great, which is what you really wanted to do in the first place, you can't beat the whole Mac ecosystem. So having a Mac has been incredibly helpful. And then right after we had the Mac, and I had that for a while, fast forward maybe a year or so, and that is when I made the other big major podcasting purchase for the podcast. And that was when I upgraded from that old audio interface to a Rodecaster Pro 2. And I absolutely love this thing. And the reason why I got it, one, I had the extra money. And two, I've always wanted a Rodecaster Pro. I've been using the Rode Pod mics probably just before I bought the Rodecaster. So I was already aware of what Rode makes and their quality of the build, that the things they do, like the Rode Pod mics. These things are built very well. I'm using one right now. They work great with the Rodecaster Pro. So anyways, when I bought the Rodecaster Pro 2, it was just like any other piece of equipment. It's all about ease of use and performance and making sure that when I talk into this Rodecaster Pro 2, the audio sounds amazing. It's at the correct level. It's got amazing processing features built into this thing. It makes your mic sound great. You can take phone calls. I can take 4 people in the same room with different channels, plus a phone call, plus a Zoom call, plus whatever. It's got a lot of different features. This thing is basically like a radio station in a box. That's the way I kind of describe it to those who don't know anything about podcasting gear. I say the Rodecaster Pro 2 is basically a radio station in a box. You can record on this thing directly. You can stream directly to a computer through this thing. It can do a lot of cool things right on the device. In fact, actually, a lot of radio stations use a Rodecaster Pro 2 for the remote broadcast because you can have 2 DJs talking on different microphones. You can stream it out live. You can have things coming in on the side. There's a lot of different things this thing can do. I don't really use all the things it can do. I use a few, but not all of them. But I love my Rodecaster Pro 2. So let's fast forward to today, January 2025. We just had Christmas, and I got a killer Christmas gift. Well, I kind of knew it was coming, but it was a killer Christmas gift, and I'm using it right now. So going from the MacBook Pro M1 edition, I have upgraded to a Mac Mini M4 with lots and lots of extra RAM I had added to this Mac Mini to ensure that this Mac Mini is going to last me a very long time and that I'm going to be able to make 4K video, all kinds of video stuff very, very seamlessly. It's all about content creation and having the right tools that's going to allow me to make content for days and days quicker, easier, faster, and more professionally. So, as I'm recording this episode right now into Audacity, I'm recording directly into my Mac Mini. This is the very first recording that I've done on the new Mac Mini. I'm very excited to see what it's like to edit this audio and how quick it can render this stuff. I'm assuming it's going to render this stuff really fast. And I'm assuming it's going to get this job done on this episode very, very quickly. And that's what it's all about. Making things sound great, making things work fantastic, seamlessly, as quick as possible. It's all about having the right tools for the right job. And since I'm already well aware of the Mac ecosystem, transferring stuff from my MacBook Pro to the Mac Mini was fairly easy. It took maybe half a day to do the transfer. And I still have my MacBook Pro. And I'm keeping my MacBook Pro as like my travel computer or something like that. It's a computer that's not locked down in this office here like the Mac Mini is. And since I do audio production for clients, having something like the new M4 Mac is going to make editing so much faster and better. And that's what it's all about, because time is money. And the less time you spend editing something, the quicker you can get it out, and the more shows you can get out, and the more things you can create, and the more things you can do in your life. Because I've heard stories of people spending like weeks and weeks editing a 30-minute podcast. That is incredible. That is insane. Now, there's two types of editing, as far as I'm concerned. There's the editing where you take the sound and make it sound great, like you do all kinds of EQ on the audio. And there's the other kind of editing where you actually start chopping stuff and moving things around. I'd like to do both, but it does not take me very long because I've got tools, I've got procedures, I've got things in place that I do to make it super easy for me. Now, speaking of editing podcasts and speaking of production on podcasts, I said in the beginning that across all the podcasts that I've touched, recorded, and produced, I was just looking at all the numbers and figuring it all out. So the grand total of all the podcasts that I've touched up to date so far, including this one, is 474 podcast episodes that I have created since 2019. That's a lot. And I know some other people will probably say, well, I create 1,000 episodes last year because I do like 4 a day or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But keep that in mind that I have done 474 podcast episodes while I've been working a full-time shift outside of this office, away from a computer. 12 hours a day. While you're sleeping and while you're watching Netflix, I'm working. And then when I'm done working, I get to do the podcast. The podcast for me is a fun thing that I enjoy doing after I've done the real world responsibilities. The podcast is not my job. The podcast is not my source of income. For me, I actually really enjoy doing a podcast. That's why I do it, because I love doing it. And the moment you do not love your podcast, or should I say the moment you do not enjoy creating a podcast, the moment you see it as a job or a chore, it's downhill from there, man. It is game over. You have to love your podcast. You have to love creating the podcast. You have to sit down and record and enjoy recording, no matter what you're doing, no matter who you're talking to. Enjoy it and love it. But hey, listen, you can podcast with whatever gear you have. If all you have is just an old laptop from 2015 and a Blue Yeti microphone, and that's all you have, that's all you use, go right ahead. There are plenty of tools out there today, which weren't available back then when I started doing anything in the mid, 2015, 2013 days. There was nothing available back then that we have today to fix bad audio, to kind of fix a lot of those things. And if you need to do video, you can try something like Riverside and do it all right inside Riverside's browser. That way, when you do all the video editing with Riverside, it actually handles all of the heavy lifting with the video stuff on the browser side. So you're not like taxing your computer if it is an older, slower computer like I had before. But hey, you can podcast about whatever you want, however you want to do it. It's your show. Make something amazing. And I know you can. Here we are in 2025. So it's all about creating the awesomeness that you can create. And it does not take fancy pieces of equipment, although it does make things a little easier. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee that if you were to buy a brand new $500 microphone or a new Rodecaster Pro 2 or both, or a new Mac Pro, Mac Mini or Mac Pro computer, there's no guarantees that any of that stuff is going to catapult your podcast to stardom. There's no guarantees in any of this stuff. I do it because I enjoy creating the podcast. And that is why I've chosen tools that make this creation process easier and better and make something amazing for you so you can make something amazing for your audience. Hey, if you want to reach out, you can directly through my website. That is podtasticaudio.com. Right on my website, there's all kinds of cool things like links to all my social media channels. And of course, all the episodes are right there. And most importantly, if you want to contact me, it's right there on the contact page, podtasticaudio.com. You have an amazing week, and I'll catch you on the next one. And until then, happy podcasting.